Hello, Torchlight participants. I miss all of you. I've been looking forward to seeing you when we return to Torchlight, but it looks like that won't be for a while. So to help pass the time, I've been planning some fun activities for our return. I don't want to say more about that and spoil the surprise. Since I won't likely be able to go camping this year, I thought I would let you share some of the small parts of my typical camping experience right here in the backyard where I live. I think the most important part of any camping adventure is the food. So today, I will demonstrate how to make a camp staple, Bannock. Bannock is the bread I typically use while camping because you can make it on a camp stove or over the fire. You can also add your favorite dried fruit, seeds or nuts, herbs and spices, or other treats to make it special. And the good news? You can make it on your stove at home, and it doesn't take a lot of ingredients. Since it's cool today and the chocolate chips have not melted into a puddle of goo, I am going to make chocolate chip bannock on the camp stove and apricot bannock on the campfire.
You will need a small bowl, a mixing spoon, a 1/4 cup and a 1/2 cup measure, a tablespoon, teaspoon, and 1/4 teaspoon measure, a liquid measuring cup, flour, baking powder, sugar, I'm using maple sugar today, cinnamon, and milk or powdered milk and water. And if you want to make it extra special, an add-in like chocolate chips, toffee bits, dried fruit, nuts, or seeds. You will also need either a small frying pan with a lid or a square of tinfoil and a stove, or 2 long sturdy sticks and a campfire.
Wash our hands. So, out with the hand sanitizer again. Lots of really good rubbing. Make sure we do the nails. Well in between the fingers. And all those little tips that I tend to miss. Now we let it dry. Fortunately, that doesn't take very long. And once it's dry, again, we're going to just rinse it off so we don't leave any flavoring in the food that we don't desire. Let's start by measuring the dry ingredients and putting them in our bowl. Starting off with the 1/2 cup measure, we're going to measure 1/2 cup of flour. I like whole wheat, but regular white all-purpose flour works too. Add 1 teaspoon of baking powder, next put in 1 tablespoon of sugar, and follow that with 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And finally, 1/4 cup of your add-ins. A 1/4 cup of apricots for this bowl, all chopped up nice and small. And a 1/4 cup of chocolate chips. Or a few more in this bowl. Simply stir it all together. And you have a nice dry powdery mess. On the trail, I would use 1½ tablespoons of powdered milk and water to make the batter, but since my backyard is close to the refrigerator, today I'm going to use milk instead. The trick with Bannock is to add just enough liquid to make the batter stick together, usually about 1/4 cup. I'm going to add it in small bits and stir it every time so that I don't add too much. Bannock needs to be a thick batter, not like pancakes. There we are, a thick, sticky batter. Make sure we get all the dry bits off the spoon, and that one is ready to go. With the batter for the sticks, I want it to be even a little bit stickier, so I'll probably add just a little bit less milk. Nice and sticky. It's all mixed up now. So first we'll cook the chocolate chip batter on the stove. First thing we need to do is to grease our frying pan with a little bit of margarine or oil. I find it easiest to do that with a clean piece of paper towel and just spread it around so that the whole bottom gets coated. And then I coat the sides as well, just to make it easier to get it out of the frying pan when we're done. Now we're going to put in the Bannock batter.
Drop it right in the pan. Don't want to waste any. And then spread it out a bit, flattening it down so there aren't any really thick spots, because the thinner it is, the quicker it will cook, and the less likely you are to burn it. All ready to cook. We're going to cover that frying pan with a small square of tin foil, or you can put the lid on it. But I find when camping, because you have one handle that has to work for both the pan and the lid, it's easier to use the foil. Next, we're going to start our stove. You want the heat fairly low, medium low on a regular kitchen stove. And this could take a couple of tries. Oh, the wind's not too bad. So there we have the stove going. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. And we put the bannock on the stove. The handle, because it's so heavy, has to come off every time. And we're going to put up a little windscreen in behind just to help it keep from blowing out. We do want to check that fairly often, and as the edges start to dry out a little bit, we're going to flip it. Alrighty, it's dried a little bit around the edges, so now we're ready to flip it over. Camp cooking always gets a little well done, but you can knock that off no problem. Put it right back on the burner. Cover it back up. Helps to hold the heat in so that it cooks a little bit more evenly. And get my windscreen set back up so that it doesn't blow out on me. Should take about just the same amount of time to do it. Alright, it should be just about done. So we're gonna take a peek. Looks good. I'm gonna turn off the stove. Take my pan off. And flip this out onto a plate. Now it just has to cool a little bit, and then we'll eat it while it's still warm. Going to set this over somewhere safe where it won't cause a problem and no one gets burnt. And now we're ready to try putting the bannock on sticks. First thing you want to do is, probably because we're actually going to have our hands in the dough at this point, rewash our hands. So, out with the hand sanitizer again. Lots of really good rubbing. It's very important to let that hand sanitizer dry, both because it makes it more effective and because we're going to a fire and alcohol is not nice around a fire. We also want to make sure that we rinse our hands so we don't add any extra flavorings to our food. So So we use our nice filtered drinking water to do that. To handle the bannock is going to be very, very sticky. So there's two ways you can counter that. You can keep your hands wet. Dough doesn't stick as easily to a wet surface. Or you can actually put the butter that you would put on your frying pan right on your hands. Which is what I'm going to do. So just a little bit of butter. Grease them up nice and greasy. Most people don't like this because it feels kind of weird. We're going to take about half the batter per stick. And this is basically the same as greasing your pot, except that because we're not using a pot, we're going to use our hands instead to shape the dough. Now we're going to push it out into basically a long, thin snake. It can be a little flat. It's actually a little better if it stays fairly thin. And then we're going to wrap this around our stick. You'll notice we've cleaned up the end of the stick, took off the bark, so that it's fairly clean. And that we're going to hold over the fire and cook. As is usual on most camping trips, the smoke is blowing right into my face, but we're still going to persevere and cook our 2 sticks of bannock. We want to put it into the fire in close to the coals. You want to avoid the open flames. They really aren't that hot, and you won't get quite as good at cooking. So find a couple of good spots here, and use the warmth of the heat from the coals to cook the bannock. Now it looks pretty good. Let it warm a bit, rotate it as we need to. Especially if you notice that some of the bannock wants to slip. You'll notice that the sticks I've chosen to use are a little bit green. They're sticks that were blown down off the trees a while back in a storm, but they're still fairly green, not too dry, so they're not likely to catch on fire. And you can see the bannock's already starting to brown. I'm going to switch spots because this one's almost done. I think this is almost worse than peeling onions. And there we have it, 2 nicely done sticks of bannock. We're going to let this cool a little bit before we try to eat it. Time to enjoy. Lots of chocolate chips and absolutely delicious. Still warm, even in the cold, rainy weather. And now to try the other. I'm just going to pull off a little bit. Apricot. Even better. I'm told that leftover Bannock will store for a day or two in an airtight container like a Ziploc bag with the air squeezed out. But Bannock is so good, I've never had leftovers to try it. Keep smiling. I hope you get a chance to try this and enjoy it as much as I do. And hope to see you soon back at Torchlight.